Welcome to Authors Revealed. I'm Becky Anderson. I am so excited. One of my favorite young adult authors is here. It's Ransom Riggs, and he's here for the sequel to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. It's Hollow City. Well, Ransom, welcome to Naperville.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how thrilled I was when I heard you were coming, because these books have been absolute favorites for us. And they're, you know what's so great about them? I think you can reach a lot of readers because they have so many aspects to them. So I want to know, you're here. It's only been, what, five days? 6 days?
5 minutes.
5
I don't know
minutes?
who am I? Yes.
I know, but where are you? You know, it's whatever.
I'm in
This is
Naperville,
Sunday.
Illinois, which is a separate entity from Chicago.
That's right.
It used to be a town of 5,000, and now it's a town of 160,000 or
That's
something.
right. Yeah, something
Growing like
around
crazy.
there. Yeah. But the book's only been out 5 or 6 days, I think.
Yes, it
Yeah.
came out last Tuesday.
I know. Probably seems longer because it's your tour. But what are you hearing from everybody? It's got to be just incredible, because I think this book, it stands alone by itself. You know, you got to read the first book first, but you're not necessarily. But this book was so incredible because it picks up right where the first book left off. So Miss Peregrine. So tell us, what are you hearing from all your fans?
I'm hearing pretty good things. Like, well, you know, that was a long wait, Ransom, but it was worth it. Which is like, okay, thanks. And then I read the book in 2 hours. Where's the next one? And I'm like, slow down. It took me two and a half years to write that. So just pace yourself.
That's right.
But it's so far so good. It's been great.
So Hollow City, and the first book, Miss Peregrine's. You know, where did the germ for this? Where did that little spark start? Where this started to grow? Tell us where that initial little seed was.
You know, I should have brought my photos. I actually have a little stash of photos, but it came from photographs. I was just a kid recently out of film school in 2009, and I was nursing an interest in old vintage photos, which I'd found at flea markets around LA, which we have many. It's a land of flea markets and swap meets and junk that people have put price tags on. I was looking for old furniture for my apartment, and I found a booth where a very nice man was selling old photos that he'd found, but not just bins of unsorted old photos, which is what you normally see, but he had gone through tens of thousands of them and curated his favorites and put them in little plastic sleeves, and there were maybe 200. And every one of them was like a work of lost art, like found folk masterpiece. So I was drawn in right away, and I started giving him all my money, and I started collecting these old photos for no particular reason, just because I liked them. And pretty soon I realized that I had a certain taste. I was looking for like Edward Gorey-esque Victorian weirdness. And I brought those to my editor at Quirk Books, because I had done a book with him before, the Sherlock Holmes Handbook. And he suggested that it was a novel. And I said, really, you'd let me do that? Because I'd never written a novel before. So I ran off with the photos and created a story.
So Miss Peregrine, you know, this whole thing, and we don't want to do any spoilers here for those who haven't read the first book or now haven't read.
Pretty good at that. So.
Good, because we can be vague, but yet tell a lot. You know, these books. When did you intend to write for young adults, or was just writing the story and knowing that, you know, that a lot of readers, no matter what your age, would be attracted to these books?
I didn't know I was writing for young adults, but that's exactly what I was doing, sort of unintentionally.
Okay.
I wrote the book, just wrote what I wanted to write, and when my publishers saw it, they were like, well, you know, there's a teenager is the main character, and most of the characters are teenagers, and there's not a lot of swearing, so maybe this is a YA book. And some bookstores agreed and shelved it in the YA section, and I said, okay, I guess I'm a YA author now. And I dove headfirst into the category and started meeting other authors in LA, where I live, who are YA authors, and I love it. I love my fellow authors. I love our readers, and I'm so glad to be a YA author.
So the thing is, I'm kind of classifying this as a new genre. You know, it's kind of fantasy. It's kind of fantasy, but with real pictures. So the pictures, you know, they always say the thing: a picture is worth 1,000 words. But this book, in particularly, adds so much reality because of the photographs. You're telling the story about, you call it, is it Jakob? You call him Jakob or Jacob?
Jacob.
Jacob, because I'm always thinking like Jakob Grimm. I just wondered if that was something.
Well, his Polish grandfather
yeah,
calls him
right,
Jakob.
Jakob, but this,
Until he, spoiler,
right? Yeah, spoiler.
can't say anything.
Yeah, but he's 16 years old. But the photographs add so much realism to this book, even though the story is so fantastical and there's so much that's going on. But it is sort of a new genre.
I really wanted to. I've always loved fantasy stories, but I like the fantasies that I feel like I could enter that world. The Narnia that's just behind the wardrobe door. Not so much the world on another planet, in the future, completely divorced from my everyday reality.
Right.
So I wanted to create a fantasy that, on one hand, there were plenty of situations and characters that were patently fictional.
Right.
A boy who has bees living in his stomach and time loops and etc. But also try and root it in what seems like our world as much as I could. So photographs were one way to do that, and also history. I did a lot of research on World War II, and it's set in amidst historical events which are somewhat realistic. So there's a little of both.
Yeah, so the research I was wondering about, because this book is set in London, the 40s, World War II.
Yeah.
The research you did, but also too, even the research on the first book, thinking that there's this island, completely dangerous island off the coast of Wales, right? Where did you do a lot of research for that book just to get some of the facts right? And was that part of the writing process really fun?
Yeah, I disappear into research and for months at a time into a deep Wikipedia hole. For the first book, I did a lot of visual research because I really wanted to get a handle on the atmosphere and what it looked like. And I knew I was making an island up. And so I had some free rein to do what I wanted. So I found a lot of inspiration in photographs of islands off the coast of Scotland and England and Wales, and I sort of combined a lot of things I thought were interesting into one fictional, never could be possible sort of place. For the second book, I did a lot more historical research, and I read several books by Peter Ackroyd on the history of London.
Right.
He's fascinating. His knowledge is very deep.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so I'm thinking about the characters, and you have Jacob. He's this 16-year-old kid. I love him because he's real. He has those things that every 16-year-old boy has. He's not one of these superhero, even though he learns something about himself. We don't do any spoilers. He learns that, he has inherited something that his grandfather, because the book starts off with sort of a tragic event that happens, but the mystery then gets off with a bang of what happens to his grandfather in the first book. But, he is real. He's one of those boys who, he has hormones raging, he has those faults, but is he based a little bit on you, and also too some of the other characters in the book, like Miss Peregrine and some of the other characters and some of the other kids that he runs into when he ends up on this island at this orphanage. Were they based on any kids that you knew growing up, or any people that you put a little bit of them into some of this?
Well, I think when you're writing a character in the first person, it's hard not to invest a little of yourself into that character. You're sitting there writing I all day long, and unconsciously it just happens.
It just happens.
I set the book in my hometown in Florida. So Jacob lives in Englewood, Florida, which is where I grew up. So there's a little very self-conscious. Sure, this is sort of, I wish something this interesting had happened to me while I was living in Florida. But not really more than that. That was about it for the autobiographical stuff. Although there was a character who was based on a guy I knew, the redneck friend of Jacob's, who earns money by letting people hit his car with a baseball bat for $1 a swing. I knew that kid. He was an interesting local character. And there's a character in a very pretentious dog in Hollow City who is named after my roommate from college.
So I want to know the picture on the front of Hollow City. Was that photograph altered, or is that the way you found it?
Well, a little of both.
Okay. All
right. Spoilers.
Okay, I don't know. We don't want to say.
Yeah.
But that photograph, and so many in both books, are just incredible. And they were staged. Some of them were staged initially when that picture was shot. But
100 years ago.
Yeah, right. But 100 years ago, or even you have pictures that look like they're from the 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s, and all black and white. Have you used any color photographs or just used them in black and white?
Well, they all have a lot of color in them, but they're like amber,
Right.
golden, sepia tones, which are gorgeous, but
Yeah,
very expensive
right.
to reproduce in printed book form.
Right, right.
So one day maybe we'll do an edition that has, all the colors in them,
Yeah.
but they're still essentially monochromatic.
Okay, sure. There's so much going on in both of these books, and it's a real balance. And I just wonder how you do this as a writer, because with the travel, the time travel and the loops that everybody's going through, and especially this one, it's World War II, and just everything, the action, the mystery. There's lots of mystery. That is absolutely exquisite in this. But just wondering, how do you balance that without having to, and there's humor too. I mean, that's what always amazed me, but there's some really good humor in this. Is it hard to balance that? Do you ever feel like maybe so many authors, they go too much one direction in certain books? And is that hard to, because even outlining it, knowing, I don't know how many books will be in this, we hope many, but how do you keep that arc going on that?
I don't know. It's not really something I do consciously.
Okay.
I just have a sort of barometer, in my head as I'm writing. And if I go too far in one direction, I'm like, well, that doesn't feel right. And
Yeah.
it's a weird mix of tones, I guess. The first book is part contemporary and part detective story and part horror and part fantasy and part romance, and
Something for everybody.
I always like that.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
the best dramas have a lot of comedy in them, and the best comedies have a lot of drama in them, and are very sad. And what's this movie that just came out? People are calling Inside Llewyn Davis a comedy or
Right.
something, and
Yeah.
the line is really blurry.
It's very blurry for a movie like that. Yeah.
I think
right.
genres should blend all over the place.
So world building, when you built this world, the photographs, of course, contributed a lot to what was going to become of that. And I've talked to other authors, who create, whether it's science fiction or fantasy or what genre it is, building that world and keeping to the parameters of it, the look, the feel, the smells, everything about that world. Did you sit down and sort of, with the first book, Miss Peregrine's, Home for Peculiar Children, did you sit down and write out your world? And are there certain rules that you have as you continue on?
Yeah, I have a very long story Bible that's like a 40,000 word outline, which is like 8 sort of headings, and then they open up and have millions of little children, where I just spent a couple of months asking myself questions about the world, like, well, if this happened, what would happen then? Or what if they did this, and what would that do? And what's all these, the superstructure of their government or whatever.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they may be questions that are never even broached or answered in the course of the books, and I may change my mind about the answers to those questions as I'm
Right.
writing. I reserve the right. But,
I guess we'll let you have that.
I just needed to know. I needed to have a better grip on it.
Writing the second book, and a lot of you have a blog, and writing about the book and hearing from readers, did you change anything for Hollow City based on readers who had read, had contacted you to tell you how much they loved, the first book?
I had considered. Oh boy, that would be a real spoiler. I can't even say that.
Okay, so hard to
Maybe.
make that. Okay.
I will say that sometimes people write me and say, I really love Millard or Hugh or someone, Emma's my favorite character. And sometimes your votes save lives.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Okay, that's a lot. Outlining, and I so many authors, they say, oh, I don't outline, and I never stick to it, or maybe I'll do something very, that's not very detailed, and I don't stick to it. And knowing that when you're writing it, the action and where the story is taking surprises you and excites you as much as it does us. Mm-hmm. Is that the kind of the way you do it, or do you write that outline? And some authors who stick, they're very strict about sticking to it.
I'm not that strict.
Yeah, I like that.
It's pretty messy. I need an outline to get started, but it's like a map that's written in disappearing ink, and as I go along, it changes, and I change it. And mainly, when I'm beginning a book, I just need to know the beginning and the end, and have a little hint of what happens in the middle, and then I can get started.
So I know you've been involved in film, and your master's was in film and everything, but what do you remember was your earliest recollection of wanting to be a writer or being involved in that sort of storytelling?
You mean in film?
In film, or whether it's with story, with writing.
Well, I've been interested in writing fiction since I was a little kid,
Okay.
and writing weird sci-fi stories in crayon and on pages of construction paper that I stapled together.
Yeah.
But I think it was in the 8th grade when I saw The Shining that I was like, what is this film? Something really interesting that's going on here. And it occurred to me that it was someone's job to tell the actors what to do and where to put the camera, and I decided I wanted that job.
Yeah. Right.
So I got really obsessed with movies and changed my career ambitions.
Right. So you get your master's at the University of Southern California in film. How has that helped you as a writer to be more visual and thinking the way story goes? So and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's a film in the works, or maybe of the first book. But just how did that help you with the visual part of your writing?
It disciplines you in the creation of stories with images. When you're writing screenplays, you're just taught, you just tell a story by stringing pictures together. And especially in the early days of film school, they really try and get you to not rely too heavily on dialogue, to telegraph what's happening inside the characters' heads. So it was a great education in terms of stringing pictures together and being a visual thinker in terms of storytelling. And I still try and do that when I'm writing. I really have to imagine a scene in my head visually.
Right.
And geographically, what's the space look like, and what are its boundaries, and what's in it, and all those things before I can start writing. Otherwise, I feel like I'm, I don't know, working without a net, or my feet aren't fully on the ground.
Right. Well, this book, it's not only the images of the black and white photography that say so much, but it's the writing that's so visual too. So the combination to me is just wow. I mean, the impression that you're getting from the story in both ways. So, and I've talked to Brian Selznick, with the invention of Hugo Cabret, and of course his illustrated images said so much for the story, but yet his writing was such a compliment to that story. So I think you guys are inventing a new genre here that I think is fabulous. And I think for some readers who maybe the images really help them, it's going to help them if they're more reluctant reader, they're going to finish this book because of the images. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I tried to find pictures that were not just an illustration of what I'd written,
Right.
That
Right.
added something that you can't quite put your finger on to the story. Because there's something that a photograph can do that words can't do, and vice versa.
Right. Your books, the previous books that you had before you wrote the first Miss Peregrine book, were more nonfiction and another collection of photographs and some other stuff. So what was the jumping off point going into more of a fantastical world for you? Was it a lot of fun switching gears and doing something where you let your imagination go?
Definitely. I had sort of written my way through film school. I was a blogger for Mental Floss and written a couple magazine articles here and there, and then I got this, it was a work-for-hire gig, writing the Sherlock Holmes handbook. So it was another sort of fun, pop culture, tongue-in-cheek, research-based project for me, which is what I'd done a lot of. And then, for no money, I was writing screenplays, which was my creative outlet.
Right.
So to get, a job writing a story was amazing. And then to be able to write fiction instead of a screenplay was really freeing. Suddenly it could be as long as I wanted, and I could describe what was happening in the character's head, and I got to include pictures. So
this is the best of both worlds.
it was the best of both worlds. And in
right.
screenplays I kind of felt like I'm not finishing it. It needs pictures to be done, and I'm quitting before it's over. I'm giving that job to someone else. So with Miss Peregrine, I got to have my pictures and my words in the same place.
I've had a bunch of readers tell me that there's sometimes they can't read this book at night. I think maybe it's the images that scare them, and the others who just devour it doesn't matter. But to me, I think of some of those other, like the movie The Orphanage. If you think of some of those films that are very scary. Oh, it's a great film. And some of the other films, and this to me has that essence, that sort of feel of it, but yet it has a much different way of, and that's why I think it can appeal to younger readers as well as adults. That whole gamut of so many readers. So, what scares you? What kind of stuff? I mean, in writing any of this, did any of it scare you in either book? Or you
a little,
yeah.
But I feel like the horror in this book is sort of a veneer.
Right.
It's not bone deep. It's really a story about a boy finding himself and growing up and meeting a girl and discovering a world.
Yeah.
But I just sort of like the creepy trappings, and I find them fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But what scares me? Oh gosh, a lot of things. I
Or
guess.
yeah, well, I'll ask you some questions at the end about
I
some
think
books
I'm
that may
always
scare
trying
you.
to conquer my fears. You
Yeah.
know? Like I've had a lifelong fear of heights, so I like to go rock climbing, and sometimes I jump out of airplanes and stuff. And
Well, good. Yeah.
it doesn't work. I'm still very scared of heights, but I'm trying.
You're trying.
And
Good
I always
attempt, though.
thought
Very good.
ghosts are scary, and haunted houses are scary, and dark rooms are scary. So I started urban exploring and going in old abandoned houses and stuff.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
I got over my
Yeah.
fear of that stuff actually,
Yeah.
and I was just, I think partly because I always had a camera in my hands, which is like a
Right.
shield. You have something between you and the world.
Yeah. So, you have some great book trailers for these books. So they're
Thanks.
fantastic. They're fantastic. And also the YouTube videos that you've done. And you went with someone who exploring in Luxembourg and in Belgium, looking and taking pictures of abandoned chateaus or big houses and things like that. What was that experience for you? Because the YouTube video is just brilliant, and it has such the atmospheric feeling that you get from watching that.
Thanks.
It brings a lot to when you read the books then too.
That was an interesting experience. I just gives you some background, I guess. When I was writing Miss Peregrine, I was looking for visual references for the house,
Right.
and I found urban exploration photography by this group of Dutch photographers who go to Belgium to take photos because the Dutch are very neat and the Belgians have a lot of chateaus that are falling down, and they're right next door. So I found some beautiful pictures of an old house that really sparked my imagination. And when it came time to do the book trailer for Miss Peregrine, Cork let me do it, and I knew that the house that had inspired me to describe this particular house in Miss Peregrine was a real place in Belgium. So I got in touch with the photographer, and he said, well, if you're ever in the Netherlands, we can go over and check it out. So I was like,
Cool.
okay, coming over. So I went to the Netherlands, and I met this guy's name is Martino Zegvaard. He's a very nice guy and a talented photographer. And we went on a 4-day road trip all over Belgium and Luxembourg, finding abandoned houses that he already knew about. He had like a secret black box GPS with the coordinates of these places on it.
Oh wow.
Because you can't tell too many people where these places
Sure.
are because they will go there and graffiti them and burn them down and stuff. And there's a sort of a code of honor among urbex photographers and explorers, which is leave no trace and
Sure.
just take pictures.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, and we didn't get arrested. We only got scared by some other urban explorer photographers who were tromping around one of the houses we were in.
Right.
And it was great. It's like walking in time capsules,
Yeah.
little mysteries.
The footage was just incredible, and that one house, it was perfect. I mean, looking at the outside of it, but what was it? But the interior, everything's sort of it's a mess.
It's a
isn't
wreck.
it? Yeah.
I think there are holes in the roof,
Yeah.
and moisture's just ruined the inside.
Oh, so sad.
And I actually tried to go back last year. I was in Belgium on a book tour, and this TV crew wanted to do an interview with me outside the house.
Right.
So we marched right up to the front gate with the TV crew and the host and a microphone, and we heard gunfire and stopped. And it turned out there was a hunting party in like the back 40, and this
Okay.
very stern lady came up to us and was like, "You have to leave right now." And we made a lot of phone calls and called the owner, and it was just like, "Nope, you have to go." So
Yeah.
we didn't get it. I
Okay.
got lucky the first time.
Yeah, but those, I picture this, and now I hear that there's a film in the works of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar
The
Children.
rumors are true.
The rumors are true, and now it's going to be a real deal, right? Tell us it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you never know.
I know you never know.
When
but
I
this is-
walk into the theater
my
with
gosh.
a bucket of popcorn in my hand and the credits are rolling, I
then
will
you'll
be
know,
like,
you know,
yes, it's really happened.
It's really happened.
But
yeah.
all indications are it's going to shoot this year, and
Okay.
it's going to come out in 2015.
Wow. And Tim Burton is associated with it?
He's directing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know,
Now,
he's been one of my favorite directors since
So
forever.
I want to know how much influence, because there are people, these books are very, very special to them. And we always worry when something we love gets put on the screen,
Right.
a book. And so how much involvement and what say will you have? And do you have any say in the script? And also too, thinking about Tim Burton, what he does with the book, we want to make sure that he's true to the essence of this and the imagery and the story.
Well, Tim Burton's a creative genius, so I need
Yeah.
him to be true to the
Yes,
vision.
yes. But are you worried a little bit? And will you have much say?
I'm not worried at all.
Okay.
They're a very talented
All right.
team. I've read an early draft of the script, and it was
Okay.
brilliant.
Fantastic.
And, you know, normally they keep authors at arm's distance because we have a lot of opinions and we're eccentric. And they're like, no thanks. Right. And luckily they've involved me a little bit just because, you know, it's a weird story. It's a lot of mythology and backstory, and every film of a book is a translation into a different medium and a compression, and you have to leave things out. So they were like, are we leaving out anything that's going to be important later? You know,
right.
So I have secrets in here that make me indispensable.
Now, do you know who's been cast as Jacob?
I don't think they've started casting yet.
Okay, haven't started casting yet.
And I can't help anyone get into the movie.
I'm sure you've been asked that a million times.
I'd be in it if I could, but
yeah. Well, we got to just tell everybody, you know, don't judge a book by its movie. Read the books first. We want everybody to read all the books first. Okay.
Sometimes the movie is better than the book. Very rarely.
Very rarely, but there are those.
Or the movie's different enough.
The difference enough that you're okay with it. You're good with it.
The book and the movie are like different entities whatsoever, and I love them both.
Yeah.
So you can't say one is better than the other.
Right. So I want to congratulate you. You got married this past September.
Thank you.
To another young adult author who is one of our favorites.
I see her book right over there.
Yes, it's right. It's right over here. And so Tara Mafi, you know, and she wrote Shatter Me, and we've done some wonderful events with her. So I want to know, what is it like being married to another writer, another young adult writer, and how much do you guys collaborate or edit or critique? And how do you work together in the same office? How does all this work? Because you guys, this is so cool.
Thanks. Someone told me on Twitter yesterday, they said, I was talking to a bookseller and she was talking about how much she liked Tahoda's books and my books, but she didn't know that either of us were married or to each other. And it was like, you should have seen her face. And I was like, hee hee, ha ha. So that sort of thing is fun. But it's great because we both understand one another's weirdness as writers and know how to make room for one another when we need to go, you know, write. And we have a long desk that we sit at side by side with laptops and noise canceling headphones, and we sit and write, and we are one another's first reader.
That's good.
I've always been really sort of protective of my writing, especially when it's fresh.
Sure.
So I wouldn't show it to anybody except Tahoda.
Yeah.
Sometimes I read it out loud. I read Hollow City out loud to her as I was writing it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And it was the best.
I've heard other authors say, reading that out loud to somebody who you really respect and their opinion can really make a difference. And I think it's not only for you to hear it, you know, out loud, but have someone else that you really trust.
Live feedback. Yeah, it's really great.
Fantastic conversation. So been looking forward to this. It's Ransom Riggs, his sequel to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and the book is Hollow City. Thanks for joining me on Authors Revealed.